All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Kellyanne, where are those ads? Because, you know, if you do it properly, and we've had some great ones, great ads, young people looking at these ads, they won't start. I think in many ways, you don't see the result for 4 or 5 years, but in many ways, that's one of the most important things we can be doing. So we're doing that, and we're spending a lot of money on that. I think it's very important.
He's talking about just say no ads. This is his entire approach to drug addiction in this country. It has absolutely nothing to do with big pharma actually lying to doctors or to, a patients or any. No, and there should be absolutely no punishment for them getting, a good chunk of this country super addicted to oxycodone and all of its related, heroin-based products. I mean, it's just so unbelievable. Okay, so what happened today at the court? So the court was literally looking at a clause, and this is becoming a very popular clause. It's sort of like in my day, we had these non-competes. They finally just said, those are illegal. They're keeping people from working. Well, there's this new clause that's ending up in settlement agreements with giant corporate America who does harm to ordinary people. And the clause actually says things like, you're shielded from liability even though your company did these really bad things. You, who owns the company, could never be sued going forward personally. Now, it's this deal took how many years to negotiate? 20. Okay, 20 years. And it would have required the Sacklers to pay $6 billion over 18 years with $4.5 billion due in the first 9 years. And the Supreme Court today, and this is the weirdest decision ever, okay? And all it's going to cause is more delay. The Supreme Court said, we think, the majority said it was 5-4, by the way, and it had very odd bedfellows, Justice Kavanaugh and Sotomayor, they were on one side of this decision, and on the other side of the decision was Clarence Thomas and Ketanji Brown Jackson. So very weird, okay? But what it actually did was it said, you can't shield individuals from future civil suits under bankruptcy law that they're not a party to, because individuals are not parties to corporate bankruptcy filings. The reason why you start a corporation is to shield yourself from certain liabilities. And then when your company goes bankrupt and you're taking your company into bankruptcy to pay off civil penalties, that doesn't shield you as a person from being sued in the future. And so the Supreme Court ruled that way, and guess what now has to happen? Start all over again, swear to God. All of the people and all of the states and all of the harmed individuals and all of the tribes, it was tribes too, among others, are all going to have to now wait even longer for the money that they're owed, because Purdue was found guilty, criminally guilty, and civilly fined also to the tune. And they entered into a civil agreement to pay $6 billion to states, individuals, tribes, etc. Okay? And now the Supreme Court says, the clause, it's like a poison pill, swear to God. And very high-priced lawyers are, they're very good at this. They figure out ways to, put stumbling blocks in the way of things closing. And so now this can't go forward. Just an example of what this court did. It was, it wasn't a decision either way. It wasn't, they just said, go start all over again. Take the clause out and start all over again. It took 20 years to get to this point. That's what people just don't get. Well, and if you wanted to be very kind about it, you could say 10 years, right? Because the claims started in 2007, true enough. The criminal plea deals from the top executives came around 2014, 7 years later. So let's just say the clock started ticking for the civil cases in 2014. Okay, let's just say that. So 10 years. Go back to square one, start all over again. That's one of the cases, okay? The other cases have a lot to do with the administrative state, which, of course, they call, Bannon and all those, idiots, called the deep state. they're not the deep state. They're the part of the government that employs about 2 million people who have expertise in various areas, like food and drugs and administration of food and drugs, like securities and exchange, like EPA, environmental protection, consumer protection, things like that. Well, they want to get rid of it. And at the very beginning of any Trump administration, the very first thing they would like to do is fire all those civil servants who bring an enormous amount of expertise in those particular arenas, in those particular commissions, agencies, to the table. So people know what they're talking about when they're talking about pollution, or they know what they're talking about when they're talking about clean water, or they know what they're talking about when they're talking about securities and exchange fraud, right? All to protect us from the elite, the well-moneyed, well-lawyered elite. Case in point, Sackler family. Just one example, okay? All the other cases have to do with the Food and Drug Administration and the mifepristone case. Well, kick the can down the road. Well, we won't decide it. We'll just say those doctors that brought this case, they had no standing. They weren't harmed. So, we're not going to decide whether or not mifepristone is, rightfully on the market for the last 20 years. And we're not going to destroy the Food and Drug Administration yet. We're going to wait. We're going to wait to see who the next president is, you see. And the Securities and Exchange Commission, which oversees fraudulent securities, okay, and fraudulent activity in the marketplace, meaning, you set up a hedge fund, okay, and your hedge fund, it does something really cheesy or wicked or questionable, right? Under our laws. It's actually paying people who invested with you off of new money that you're getting from new investors instead of paying you what your investment earned. That's called a Ponzi scheme. Securities and Exchange Commission would oversee something like that. Now, in this case today that we had with the Securities and Exchange Commission, this is the case of a right-wing hedge fund manager who's also a talk show host. Swear to God. And he's running a hedge fund. And his hedge fund is, it's janky, okay? It's hinky. His hedge fund is overvaluing the assets that are in the hedge fund. And by overvaluing the assets, he can charge you more to manage them. We only do well when our clients do well, like that kind of a thing. So he overvalued his assets so that he could charge his investors more to manage those assets. And he got caught doing it. They just ruled that the Securities and Exchange Commission isn't entitled anymore to level civil fines against that kind of bad behavior in the securities marketplace. No, that he now has to you take him all the way to federal court, and 10 years from now we'll get back to the Supreme Court and they'll rule again about whatever. But the Securities and Exchange Commission can't level fines, civil fines, against people who violate the securities and exchange rules. Don't have time to listen to the live show? Want to hear more on your schedule? Go to randyrhodes.com and buy a stinking podcast.